I just wanted to do an update on Adam Carolla and the divorce from Lynette, because I'm a fan of the show, so I was kind of surprised to hear at the top of the year, the first show, new show in January of this year, he announced that the divorce is still ongoing and that it's been a difficult process and it's been a long process, and then he also announced that Brian and Gina were no longer on the show, fired apparently, or went separate ways, or however that went down. So it was all kind of surprising to me. So then I looked into it to see if there's any updates on this divorce, which has definitely been pending for a while now, well over a year, from what I can tell. So yeah, and it sounds like they were together 25 years. Of course, they have the two kids who are 16 at this point, but apparently just not going that well. I'm assuming it's a problem with liquid assets would be my guess. When you have a high net worth and not a lot of way to get your hands on cash, which would be my assumption here, that can create issues because there's real estate, there's these high net worth vehicles, these race cars and vintage race cars that Adam's into, but how do you get money from those things? You end up borrowing, and then he owns this business with the podcast and all this other stuff, but it's not really cash in the bank necessarily. So then how do you cash out the other person in a divorce where it seems clear to me they're each going to get half here? So you got to figure out, what do you do if you've got 50 million net worth, how do you come up with 25 for Lynette? And it's tough to do. It's almost impossible to do. So then you got to figure out another way around it to make it happen. And I'm sure that's probably what they're struggling with, is how do you divide up assets? How do you figure out net worth? Divide that, but also talking about alimony or child support or all these other things swirling around. So I can see how that would be challenging. I found an older article. There's not a lot of news on this thing. I think they must not be talking to the media, which is good, except for the rest of us who want to know more about what's going on. There's an older article that sort of explained what was happening back in May of 2021, really when the news first hit, that they're both a product of divorce. Neither one of them wanted a divorce, but they're just very different people, and after 25 plus years of knowing each other, they just went their separate ways. So I found that, and then I hear the news, and I think Adam even mentioned this on his show, that he's now dating somebody, but I think that's one place where my advice would have been, don't start dating anybody till you have an agreement. Maybe that's getting in the way. Maybe that is causing hurt feelings. It has a way of doing that. So, like the state where I practice in Michigan, it's not that it's against the law. Well, technically it's against the law. Adultery is technically illegal in Michigan and in a lot of states, but no one's prosecuted for it. It's not really a real risk. So the problem isn't that you have a girlfriend and you're still married. The problem, not from a legal standpoint, the problem is you have a girlfriend and you're still married and your wife doesn't like that. Now she feels like maybe that caused the breakdown, or it's disrespectful to her because you're still married, or whatever the feelings and emotions that creates. It's not good. It's best avoided. My advice would be to not be dating someone, but in their case it's too late. He's been dating this comedian for some time now. So maybe that's getting in the way here. I know he's dating, her name's Crystal Denha, so I don't know, maybe that's causing issues. I suspect that the issues are the liquidity. There's a problem with this type of estate, and with a lot of high net worth people, it's a challenge. There's lots of things worth lots of money, but not many you can write a check on tomorrow. So you end up having to take out loans. Adam Carolla's businesses, multiple businesses, probably not a lot of debt at this point, not a lot of loans. So then you have to go into taking on some debt to try to buy out your spouse, and that can be difficult and frustrating, to say the least. But yeah, that was the latest that I heard. I didn't know this was still ongoing. I had read from an older article that Adam Carolla had filed in pro per, meaning without a lawyer. That kind of shocked me, that someone was going to handle all this without an attorney, with multiple pieces of real estate and business ownership. And I just don't know how that would happen without an attorney. Of course, he's friends with Mark Garrigus, who's a very famous attorney, so maybe the thought was he's going to handle it and just get advice as needed. And officially there's no lawyer, I don't know. But Lynette apparently has an attorney, because that's referenced in a couple different articles that I found, including Vanity Fair and Yahoo News and these different places. So one of them has an attorney, maybe they both do, and it's just not officially that they both have attorneys. I just would be shocked that someone would try to handle all that without an attorney. There's way more to this process than just some paperwork to file for a divorce. You know, there's making sure that the real estate is handled properly. There's commercial real estate involved. There's ownership of these different businesses and how that's going to be structured. There's payments of spousal support or alimony, which in Michigan, I mean, how would you even know how to calculate that? It's not something that's easily ascertainable. So I think it's pretty challenging and unrealistic to go through this process with no lawyer. In his case, some people that can get divorced without an attorney, I get that. I almost never think it's a good idea, of course, because I am a divorce attorney, but you know, look, there's 20-year-olds that have no property and no kids, and they made a mistake and they get divorced, and they fill out some forms and they do one court appearance or whatever it is, and they're done. I mean, that certainly could be. But to be plowing through this entire empire that he's created over the years with no lawyer, and I don't believe it. First of all, I think he's talking to a lawyer. He'd have to be. I hope he is. But there wasn't one, last I saw, there wasn't one mentioned as listed as his attorney, where it did say Lynette had an attorney, although I didn't see who. So, you know, they're doing a good job at keeping this information out of the news. I don't think either one of them are talking to news media at this point, so there's just information coming up here and there about it. The statements that Adam makes on his podcast, you know, is something that they're using from time to time. And you know, but yeah, that was the latest I saw. I just was kind of surprised to hear at the beginning of January that this is still ongoing, so wanted to do an update.